The Gestapo officer's hands were shaking as he pinned her photograph to the wall. 5 million Reichsmarks for one woman. A woman who, at that very moment, was sitting 3 tables away in a Paris cafe, calmly sipping coffee and reading a newspaper that featured her own wanted poster on the front page. Nancy Wake didn't look like the most dangerous person in Nazi-occupied Europe. But then again, that was exactly why she was. You're Nancy Wake, and you're about to die. Again. It's March 1943, walking down Rue de la Paix in broad daylight, wearing a blue dress that cost more than most people earn in a month. Your lipstick is perfect. Your hair is styled in victory rolls. You look like a woman who has never held a gun, never killed a man, never blown up a train carrying Nazi ammunition. The Gestapo checkpoint appears around the corner. 4 officers, machine guns, and a table covered in photographs. Your photograph, your heart doesn't race. After 3 years of this, your body has learned not to betray you. Your pulse stays steady. Your breathing remains normal. Your hands don't shake. The young officer looks up as you approach. His eyes scan your face, then drop to the photographs. Back to your face. Down to the photos. His hand moves toward his sidearm. You smile. Not a nervous smile. The kind of smile you used to give waiters at expensive restaurants when they brought you the wrong wine. Politely dismissive. Papers, he says in broken French. You sigh and reach into your handbag. Past the lipstick. Past the compact mirror. Past the loaded Luger pistol. To the identity papers that say you are Madame André Fiacca, wife of a wealthy industrialist. Nancy Wake died 2 years ago. At least, officially. The officer studies the papers. His German is too fast to follow completely, but you catch enough to know he's reporting in. Those 3 seconds between when someone looks at your face and when they decide whether you live or die stretch like hours. In those seconds, you remember everything. Your husband Henri, probably dead in a concentration camp. The resistance fighters who trust you. The Jewish families you've smuggled to safety. The ammunition depots you've blown to pieces. The German officers you've killed with your bare hands. The officer hands back your papers. Madam, he says with a slight bow. You nod and walk away. Slowly. Because Nancy Wake would never run, but as you turn the corner, you hear footsteps behind you. The quick, purposeful stride of someone trying to catch up without seeming to hurry. You don't turn around. You simply adjust your grip on your handbag and prepare to become someone else entirely. 6 months earlier, you were learning how to strangle a man with piano wire. The instructor was a British SOE agent named Collins who spoke in clipped sentences and never smiled. Quick twist. Pull tight. Count to 15. No talking. You practiced on a dummy, learning the motion, the leverage, the pressure needed to crush a windpipe before your target could scream. Why piano wire? Asked Sylvia, a resistance fighter who'd been captured twice and escaped both times. Silent, Collins replied. Clean. Available everywhere. In your previous life, your biggest worry was whether the servants had polished the silver properly. Now you were learning 17 different ways to kill a human being without making a sound. Henri, your husband, was gone now. Captured during a raid on a German supply depot. The last news suggested he was in Fraine's prison, though rumors placed him everywhere from Buchenwald to a mass grave outside Paris. Again, said Collins, you wrapped the wire around the dummy's neck. Quick twist. Pull tight. Count to 15. Faster. Quick twist. Pull tight. Count to 15. Without thinking. Your hands moved automatically now. Muscle memory. Good, Collins said. Now we teach you about explosives. Your first kill happened on a Tuesday. A German courier carrying documents. Young, maybe 19, with a fresh face that belonged in a university lecture hall, not a war zone. The wire went around his neck exactly like Collins had taught you. But Collins hadn't mentioned the way a human body fights back. The desperate clawing at the wire. The thrashing. The horrible, wet sounds that humans make when they're dying. He hadn't mentioned that 15 seconds feels like 15 minutes when you're watching someone's eyes go dim. By the second kill, you'd learn to look away at the crucial moment. By the fifth, you'd stopped counting to 15. You could feel when it was over. By the 10th, you'd stopped keeping count altogether. What mattered was that each death made you more valuable to the resistance and more dangerous to the Germans. 5 million Reichsmarks. More than the price on Charles de Gaulle's head. Hitler himself had reportedly asked who this white mouse was and why his entire intelligence apparatus couldn't catch one woman. The answer was simple: they kept looking for Nancy Wake, and Nancy Wake, as far as the world knew, didn't exist anymore. The footsteps behind you are getting closer. You turn into Galeries Lafayette, the massive department store. Perfect. Crowds mean cover. Multiple exits. Witnesses that make gunfire unlikely. You pretend to examine silk scarves while watching the reflection in the store window. Your tail is a woman. Mid-30s, brown coat, walking with the studied casualness of someone trained in surveillance. She stops 3 displays away and begins examining handbags with intense interest. Gestapo or milice, almost certainly. The French police who've decided that collaboration pays better than resistance. You spot 2 more watchers. A man by the jewelry counter. Another woman near the entrance point. 3 of them. Professional spacing. Multiple escape routes covered. This is more than a random spot check. This is a coordinated operation, which means someone has talked. You pay for a scarf with exact change and walk toward the elevator with the unhurried gait of someone heading to the ladies' room. Behind you, brown coat mirrors your movement. The elevator doors are closing when brown coat makes her move. Excusez-moi, she calls out, rushing toward you with her hand extended. You hold the doors open with a polite smile. Oui. She steps inside. For a moment, you're alone together in a space roughly the size of a coffin, rising slowly toward the upper floors. Going up, you ask pleasantly. 4th floor, she replies. You press the button for the 3rd floor. As the elevator lurches upward, you study her reflection. She's watching you with the intensity people reserve for wild animals. Her hand is inside her coat, reaching for something. That's when you realize she knows exactly who you are, and you realize something else. The other 2 watchers aren't here to arrest you. They're here to make sure nobody else leaves the store alive. This isn't a capture operation. It's an execution. The elevator reaches the 3rd floor with a gentle chime. The doors begin to open. In the reflection, you see brown coat's hand emerge from her coat holding a silenced pistol. You have maybe 2 seconds to live. You pivot and drive your right elbow backward into brown coat's solar plexus. The breath explodes out of her lungs. The pistol wavers. Not enough. You grab her wrist and twist until you hear bones crack. The pistol clatters to the floor. She opens her mouth to scream and you slam your knee into her face, feeling her nose break. Still not enough. She's reaching for something else. A knife. Or maybe a backup weapon. You wrap your hands around her throat and squeeze. Not piano wire this time. Just fingers and pressure and the knowledge that one of you is walking out of this elevator and the other isn't. When it's over, you pick up her pistol and press the button for the 4th floor. Behind you, you hear shouting from the main floor. They've realized something has gone wrong. You have maybe 3 minutes before they find the body. Maybe 5 before they seal the building. But as you reach the roof access door, you hear something that makes your blood freeze. Gunfire. Not the controlled bursts of a police operation, but the rapid, desperate shooting of a firefight. From the street below comes the sound of car engines, shouting in German, and more gunfire. 4 blocks away, black smoke is rising from the safe house where you were supposed to meet Marcel and his team tonight. The safe house where you'd stored enough weapons and explosives to arm a small army. The safe house that only 5 people knew about. As you watch, a German truck convoy rounds the corner, heading directly for another safe house. The backup location that only 3 people knew about. Someone isn't just talking. Someone is giving them everything. Your entire network, 3 years of careful recruitment, training, and trust, is being rolled up like a carpet. The radio in your handbag crackles to life. Jacques, your radio operator. White mouse, this is Falcon. The nest is burning. Repeat, the nest is burning. All eggs are broken. Do not return to any coop. Trust no one. Trust no one. The transmission ends in a burst of static that might be interference or might be the sound of Jacques dying. You're alone now. Completely, utterly alone in a city full of people who want you dead, and somewhere in Paris, someone who knows your real identity, your safe houses, your contacts, is telling the Germans everything. The skylight that leads to freedom is 40 feet from where you're standing, between you and escape. An expanse of slate roofing slick with March rain, a gap between buildings that requires a running jump, and the small matter of crossing open roof space while German search teams position themselves. On every street below, you edge toward the building's perimeter and look down. 4 stories to the street. German vehicles parked at both intersections. Soldiers positioned at intervals that suggest they know exactly which building you're in, which means Brown Coat managed to send some signal before you killed her. Or there's another watcher you didn't spot. Or the betrayal runs deeper than you thought. You review what you know. The operation today was planned last week. Only 4 people knew you'd be walking down Rue de la Paix at this specific time: Marcel, Jacques, Sylvia, and Father Bernard. Marcel is dead. You can see his body from here, sprawled in the doorway of the safe house that's still burning. Jacques might be dead. The radio went silent mid-transmission. That leaves Sylvia and Father Bernard. Sylvia, who's been captured twice and escaped both times. Unusually lucky for someone operating in occupied Paris, Father Bernard, who has access to church records that make perfect cover for forged identity papers. Who knows the locations of every safe house because someone needs to provide absolution for what you do in them. Father Bernard, who married you and Henri 5 years ago in a ceremony that now seems like it happened to different people entirely. The more you think about it, the more obvious it becomes. Father Bernard, the priest who's never been arrested despite German raids on a dozen other churches, who always seems to know just a little too much about German patrol schedules. You examine the gap between buildings again. 8 feet, maybe 9. Manageable if you had a running start and weren't wearing heels. You take 3 steps back, measure the distance one more time, and run for a moment. You're airborne above a 4-story drop, suspended between buildings. Your right foot hits the edge of the opposite roof. Your left foot hits nothing but air. For an instant, you're balanced on one foot with momentum carrying you backward toward empty space. Then your hands find the roof's edge and you haul yourself up with strength you didn't know you possessed. Behind you, voices are shouting from the roof you just left. Someone has reached the access door. The skylight is 15 feet away. You drop through the opening into an abandoned artist's studio and navigate the dark stairwell down by touch.at the ground floor. You pause to listen. Footsteps outside. Vehicle engines. Radio chatter in German. The building is surrounded, but surrounded isn't the same as occupied. Not yet. You peer through a crack in the boarded-up windows. The street is full of German troops, but they're facing outward, watching for someone trying to escape. They're not expecting someone to walk out the front door, which is exactly what you're going to do. You check your appearance in a shard of broken mirror. Lipstick smudged but not missing. Hair disheveled but not obviously so. Dress torn at the shoulder but in a way that could be explained by catching it on something. You look like a woman who's been shopping and got caught in some kind of disturbance. Frightened but not guilty. Confused but not dangerous. You walk to the front door, take a deep breath, and step into the street with the expression of someone who has no idea why there are so many soldiers around. A German officer approaches immediately. Madam, this area is restricted. You must leave immediately. What's happening? You ask, adding just the right note of panic. I was shopping and then I heard shooting. A terrorist incident, he replies. Very dangerous. You cannot remain here. Of course, you say, backing away with appropriate nervousness. I'll go home immediately. He nods and waves you toward the nearest checkpoint, where soldiers are processing civilians. The soldier checking documents is young, efficient, and more interested in moving people through quickly than in studying faces. He glances at your papers, makes a mark on his clipboard, and waves you through. Next. Just like that, you're past the cordon and walking away from the largest manhunt in Paris, but you're walking away alone. Your network is destroyed. Your safe houses are compromised. Your contacts are dead or captured. That evening, you sit in a cafe you've never visited before, drinking ersatz coffee and reading a newspaper that features your photograph on the front page. The headline reads, "White Mouse Escapes, Reward Increased to 10 million Reichsmarks." 10 million. They've doubled the bounty in 6 hours. The waitress approaches your table. "Another coffee, madam." You look up and notice that she's studying your face with more attention than necessary. Her eyes keep darting to the folded newspaper beside your cup. 10 million Reichsmarks is more money than most people see in a lifetime. More than enough to make every person in Paris a potential enemy. By the time you reach the street, you've decided on option 4, survive the next 24 hours and worry about everything else tomorrow, because tomorrow, you're going to do something that Nancy Wake would never consider. You're going to surrender. Not real surrender, of course. That would be suicide. What you're planning is more subtle, more dangerous, and absolutely insane. You're going to walk into Gestapo headquarters and volunteer to help them catch the White Mouse. 10 million Reichsmarks has turned every civilian in Paris into a potential informant. But informants are usually people who know something useful, and what could be more useful than someone who claims to have information about the White Mouse's identity, methods, and next target? The Gestapo has been chasing shadows for 3 years. They have a bounty, a nickname, and a handful of blurry photographs. What they don't have is anyone who's met the White Mouse face to face and lived to describe the experience. You're going to give them exactly what they want, a witness. A witness who will require protection from White Mouse retaliation. A witness who will need to be kept somewhere safe while providing detailed information about resistance operations. A witness who will have access to German intelligence files, prisoner lists, and interrogation reports, files that might tell you what happened to Henri. The next morning, you walk into the Charité building wearing a different dress, a different hairstyle, and an expression of barely controlled terror. Your new identity is Simone Dubois, a secretary who worked for a shipping company. Your story is that the White Mouse approached you 3 weeks ago, asking questions about German supply shipments. You refused to help, but you saw her face clearly and overheard enough to know about planned operations. The desk sergeant barely looks up when you approach. I have information about the White Mouse," you say in a voice that shakes just enough to suggest genuine fear. That gets his attention. He picks up a telephone, speaks briefly to someone, and points toward a bench. "Sit. Someone will see you." After 30 minutes, a man in civilian clothes approaches. "Mademoiselle Dubois. I am Inspector Hartmann. You have information about a terrorist." "About the White Mouse," you confirm. She threatened me." Hartmann's expression sharpens. "When was this?" You provide a description that's approximately 60% accurate. Close enough to be convincing, different enough to send any manhunt in the wrong direction. Height about 160 centimeters. Blonde hair, very short. Blue eyes. Thin build. She spoke French with a slight accent, maybe German, maybe Swiss. She wore expensive clothes, but they looked wrong on her. Like someone pretending to be wealthy. Klein studies you with the calculating gaze of someone who's built a career on identifying lies. "You work for Marseille's shipping, yes?" "I did. Until last week." You maintain eye contact without appearing defiant. Nervous but honest. "And this woman approached you about cargo schedules?" "Yes, sir." "What specifically did she want to know?" You provide details about imaginary shipping manifests and fictional cargo transfers. Klein makes notes. When you finish, he's quiet for a long moment. Your description of this woman differs from our intelligence reports. Your heart rate increases, but you keep your expression unchanged. "I can only tell you what I saw. Our sources suggest the White Mouse is brunette, not blonde. She might have changed her appearance, you suggest. If she's as careful as you think, disguises would be logical." Klein exchanges a glance with Hartmann. "Indeed. And the accent you mentioned, you're certain it wasn't French?" "I'm not certain of anything," you admit. "I was frightened. But it sounded foreign. Educated, but not quite right. We'd like you to look at some photographs, Klein says finally. See if you recognize any associates. He produces a folder containing surveillance photos. Most of the faces are strangers, but some are horribly familiar. Marcel, stamped with a red X that probably means dead. Jacques, no stamp, which might mean captured or might mean missing. Sylvia, no stamp. Interesting. Father Bernard, no stamp. Very interesting. This one, you say, pointing to a photograph of a man you've never seen before. I think I might have seen him near our office building, but I can't be certain. We're going to arrange temporary accommodations for you while we investigate this information. For your own protection. Where? Hotel Lutetia. Comfortable rooms, excellent security. You'll be quite safe there. Hotel Lutetia. The luxury hotel that the Germans have converted into their headquarters for processing deportations and interrogations, which means you'll be living in the center of German intelligence operations in Paris. With access to information, files, and the kind of intelligence that the resistance would kill for. Thank you, you say. I appreciate your protection. As you follow Hartmann toward the building's exit, you catch sight of a bulletin board covered with wanted posters, operational maps, and what appears to be an organizational chart of resistance networks, your network. Names, photographs, and connecting lines that show relationships between operatives. Most of the photographs have red X marks. Dead or captured, but some don't. Including several names you don't recognize and faces you've never seen. There are resistance members you don't know about. People who survived the roundup because they were operating independently of your compromised network, people who might still be fighting, and if they're still fighting, they might be willing to help you settle the score with Father Bernard. Hotel Lutetia is exactly as luxurious as advertised and exactly as sinister as expected. The lobby still retains its pre-war elegance, marble floors, crystal chandeliers, Art Deco furnishings. But the guests are all German officers, French collaborators, and people like you who found themselves in the uncertain space between prisoner and protected witness. Your room is on the 4th floor, overlooking Boulevard Raspail. Comfortable bed, private bath, and a view of the street where arrested Jews wait in lines to be processed for deportation. A German clerk provides you with meal vouchers, a daily schedule, and a list of restrictions. You're free to move within the hotel, but leaving requires permission and escort. You're expected to be available for questioning at any time. Any questions? The clerk asks. I'd like to visit the library, if there is one. Reading helps me cope with stress. The clerk consults a clipboard. 3rd floor. Open from 10 to 6. Supervised access only. Perfect. Libraries in administrative buildings always contain more than books. Maps, personnel directories, operational reports that don't belong in individual offices. That evening, you join other hotel guests for dinner in the main dining room. The food is better than anything you've eaten in months. Real meat, fresh vegetables, white bread that isn't adulterated with sawdust or turnip flour. Your tablemates include a Belgian businessman who claims to have information about resistance smuggling routes, and a French woman about your age who says very little and eats very slowly. The French woman interests you. Something about her posture suggests military training. Something about her eyes suggests she's memorizing everything she sees. What brings you here? You ask quietly. Information about terrorists, she replies. Same as everyone else. What kind of terrorists? She studies you before answering. The kind that killed German officers in restaurants. Your fork pauses halfway to your mouth. That's one of the fictional operations you mentioned to Hartmann. Information that supposedly came from your encounter with the White Mouse. Either this woman was present during your interrogation, or your fictional intelligence is being taken seriously enough to generate real investigations. Terrible, you murmur. I hope they catch whoever's responsible. Oh, they will, she says with certainty. They always do, eventually. You're inside German headquarters with access to intelligence about resistance operations, deportations, and prisoner interrogations. But you're also surrounded by people whose job it is to identify threats to German security. The question is how to make contact with surviving resistance members without exposing yourself. The answer comes to you as you're drifting off to sleep. The library. Supervised by whom? German officers. French collaborators. Or maybe, just maybe, by someone who's playing the same game you are, someone who volunteered to be helpful. Someone who gained access to German intelligence by pretending to cooperate, someone who's been waiting for an opportunity to make contact with surviving resistance members. The next morning, you report to the art department. The police artist is a thin man with nervous hands who speaks French with a thick German accent. You provide the same fictional description you gave Hartmann, adding details about bone structure, nose shape, and eye spacing that will ensure the resulting portrait looks nothing like you. Very good, the artist says. This will be distributed to all checkpoints by tomorrow. Excellent. Let them search for a blonde woman with blue eyes and a pointed chin. While they're looking for her, you'll be standing in plain sight with brown hair, brown eyes, and documents that identify you as Simone Du Bois. At 10 a.m., you visit the library. The room is smaller than expected, maybe 30 feet square, lined with bookshelves containing administrative manuals, legal references, and recreational reading in both French and German. The librarian is a woman about 40 years old, unremarkable in every way except for her posture. She sits too straight, moves too efficiently, and watches the door with the attention of someone expecting trouble. I'd like to read something, you tell her. To help pass the time. What type of material interests you? History, perhaps. French history. She leads you to a section containing books about Napoleon, the Revolution, and the Great War. These are popular with our guests. As she reaches for a volume about Verdun, her sleeve pulls back slightly, revealing what might be a scar or might be a tattoo on her wrist. For the next hour, you read about trench warfare while observing the librarian's routine. She checks books in and out, answers questions from German officers, and maintains a card catalog with precision. At exactly 11:30, she approaches your table. Finding everything you need? Yes, thank you. The material is educational. Historical perspectives can be illuminating, she agrees. Sometimes events that seem unrelated are actually part of larger patterns. You look up from your book. Patterns. Resistance movements, for example. They often survive disruption by adapting rather than rebuilding in the same form. The words are carefully chosen. Not quite code, but not quite casual conversation either. Adaptation requires intelligence, you observe. Information about what happened and why. Indeed. And sometimes that information is available in unexpected places. She returns to her desk, leaving you with the strong impression that you've just been evaluated and possibly recruited. At noon, you check out 2 books and return to your room. Inside the front cover of the Verdun history, you find a small piece of paper with what appears to be a library due date stamp, except the date is impossible, February 30th. Below the stamp, someone has written in pencil, Confession Booth, St. Severin, 8 p.m. tonight. Thursday liturgy. You burn the paper in the bathroom sink and flush the ashes. St. Severin is a medieval church about 20 minutes walk from the hotel. Thursday liturgy would provide cover for a brief conversation in the confessional, but it would also require leaving the hotel after hours, which means explaining your absence to the German guards, unless, of course, you don't plan to come back. At 7:45 p.m., you inform the desk clerk that you're feeling unwell and will be resting in your room for the evening. At 7:55 p.m., you climb out your 4th floor window onto a maintenance ledge and begin making your way toward the fire escape. Time to find out whether Nancy Wake is really dead or just temporarily unavailable. St. Severin at night is a monument to shadows and whispered prayers. The Gothic architecture that seems imposing in daylight becomes genuinely ominous when lit only by votive candles. You enter through a side door that should be locked but isn't. Inside, the nave is empty except for an elderly woman praying near the altar and a young man who might be a priest or might be a resistance fighter dressed as one. The confession booths are in the north transept, dark wooden boxes that predate the war by centuries. You choose the third booth from the left, arbitrary, but the paper didn't specify which one. Inside, the space is cramped and claustrophobic. You kneel and wait. After 5 minutes, you hear movement in the priest's compartment. A voice speaks through the grill, barely above a whisper. "Bless me, Father, for I have sinned." The traditional opening, but you're on the wrong side of the confessional for that phrase. Unless it's a recognition code. "How long since your last confession?" you respond, following the liturgical format. 3 years. Since the occupation began. Definitely a code. What sins trouble your conscience? "I've killed German soldiers. I've destroyed their supplies. I've helped their enemies escape." A pause. "And I've failed to protect people I was responsible for." You recognize the voice now. It's the librarian. "Absolution requires penance," you reply. "What penance do you accept?" "To continue the work until it's finished. To protect those who remain. To ensure that the guilty are punished." Are you prepared for the consequences of such penance? I am. You lean closer to the grill. "Then I have something to confess as well." "Speak." "I am the white mouse." Silence. Long enough that you begin to wonder if you've made a fatal mistake. Finally, prove it. You describe 3 operations that were never documented in German files. The sabotage of the ammunition depot near Lyon. The assassination of Oberst Müller in Marseilles. The escape route through the Pyrenees that saved 67 Jews and Allied airmen, operations that only the White Mouse would know about in detail. "Mother of God," the voice whispers. "We thought you were dead." The network was betrayed. By Father Bernard. "We suspected. But proving it, I don't need proof. I need information. About prisoners. About who's still operational. About how to rebuild. The Germans are looking for you everywhere. The bounty, I know about the bounty. 10 million Reichsmarks. It's flattering, in a way. A sound that might be laughter. Only you would find that flattering. What's your name?" "Marie. I've been coordinating what's left of the northern cells. We have maybe 30 people still active, but they're scattered and afraid to make contact. Weapons. Some. Hidden in locations that Father Bernard didn't know about. Safe houses. 3 that are probably secure. Maybe 4. What about prisoners? Do you have access to deportation lists?" "Limited access. Through contacts in the administrative offices." "Why?" You hesitate. Revealing personal motivation could compromise operational security. But you need her help, and help requires trust. "My husband. Henri Fiacca. Captured during the Place Vendôme operation in January. I need to know if he's alive. I'll check the lists. But most people captured in January are probably dead." "I know. I'm sorry." "Don't be sorry yet. Just find out. What are your plans?" "If you're working inside German headquarters, I'm gathering intelligence and looking for opportunities. But I can't stay there indefinitely. Eventually, they'll realize that Simone Du Bois doesn't exist." "Then what?" "First, we deal with Father Bernard. Permanently. Second, we identify any other traitors in the network. Third, we hit them so hard they forget about hunting resistance members and start worrying about protecting themselves. That's not a plan. That's revenge. Sometimes they're the same thing. You hear movement outside the confessional. Footsteps, voices, the sound of multiple people entering the church. "Someone's coming," Marie whispers. Through the wooden walls of the confessional, you hear voices approaching. Speaking French, but with the careful pronunciation of non-native speakers, German voices, you draw the pistol from your handbag and check the safety. 6 rounds. Not enough for a firefight, but enough to avoid capture. The voices are closer now. Someone is giving orders about searching the building systematically. They know we're here, you whisper. Maybe. Or maybe they're just being thorough. Either way, we need to leave. Now. There's a passage behind the altar. Leads to the crypt and then to the street. Can you reach it without being seen? If you create a distraction, you consider options. A distraction that draws German soldiers away from the altar area but doesn't result in your immediate capture or death. Give me 30 seconds, then move toward the altar. Stay low and stay quiet. What are you going to do? Something Nancy Wake would never consider. You open the confessional door and step into the nave, pistol concealed but ready. The German patrol consists of 4 men, 2 officers and 2 enlisted soldiers, all armed, all moving with the confidence of people who don't expect serious resistance. You approach them with the stumbling gait of someone who's had too much wine, calling out in slurred French, "Excusez-moi. Can you help me? I'm lost." The lead officer, a captain, holds up a hand to stop you. "This area is restricted, madam. You must leave immediately." "But I need to find, what time is it? I'm supposed to meet." You sway slightly, as if struggling to maintain balance. "Madam, you are intoxicated. Return to your home before we arrest you for public disturbance." Arrest. You let your voice rise in pitch, adding the kind of indignant panic that drunk women excel at producing. "You can't arrest me. I haven't done anything wrong. I demand to speak to a French policeman." Your voice echoes through the stone architecture, easily loud enough to mask any sounds Marie might make while moving toward the altar. The captain's patience is wearing thin. Silence. "You will leave now or you will be detained." Detained for what? Walking in a church. Asking for help. This is France, not Germany. All 4 men are now focused entirely on you, hands moving toward weapons, positioned to contain a potential threat, which means they're not watching the altar area where Marie should be making her escape. The captain steps closer. "Your papers." Immediately. You fumble in your handbag, moving slowly and clumsily while keeping the pistol hidden. Papers, yes, somewhere, behind the soldiers. You catch a glimpse of movement near the altar. Marie, low and fast, disappearing into shadows. "Here," you say, producing Simone Du Bois's identity documents. The captain examines them with a flashlight. "You live on Rue des Martyrs." "Yes." "That is 8 kilometers from here." "What are you doing in this district?" "I was visiting a friend," you say, allowing your voice to return to normal pitch. "But she wasn't home, so I stopped here to pray for guidance." At night. "I find churches more peaceful after dark. Fewer distractions." The captain studies your face in the flashlight beam. Something in his expression changes, a flicker of recognition, or maybe just suspicion. "Remain here," he tells his men. To you, "Come with me." He leads you toward the altar area where Marie made her escape. If there's evidence of her presence, disturbed dust, an open passage, anything that suggests the confessional meeting, you're both dead. But when his flashlight sweeps the area, it reveals nothing but centuries-old stone and undisturbed shadows. You were praying alone. Yes. For how long? Maybe 30 minutes. I lose track of time when I pray. He nods and turns back toward his men. False alarm. Continue the patrol. As they prepare to leave, the captain pauses at the door. Madame Du Bois. Yes. Next time you wish to pray, choose a church in your own district. This area is unstable. Of course. Thank you for the advice. They leave, and you wait 5 full minutes before moving toward the altar area yourself. Behind a carved stone screen, you find what Marie was looking for, a narrow staircase leading down into darkness. The medieval crypt system beneath St. Severin connects to several buildings in the area, a relic of times when religious communities needed to move secretly during periods of persecution. You descend carefully, using the wall for guidance in absolute darkness. At the bottom, a corridor extends in both directions. You choose left, moving slowly until you see faint light ahead. The light comes from a partially open door that leads into a basement storage room. Marie is waiting, along with two other people you don't recognize. "Close call," she says as you enter. Too close. They knew about the church. One of the strangers, a man about 50 with calloused hands and oil stains on his clothes, speaks up. "I'm Andre. I run a garage that repairs German vehicles. Useful for gathering intelligence." The other stranger is a woman roughly your age, well-dressed, with the bearing of someone accustomed to authority. "Colette. I work in the prefecture, processing deportation orders. I copy lists and pass information to families." "They know you're alive," Marie tells you. "Word is spreading through what's left of the network. People want to know what happens next. What happens next is that we verify everyone's loyalty before we trust anyone with operational information. You suspect more traitors. I know there are more traitors. Father Bernard couldn't have compromised the entire network by himself. He had help." Andre frowns. "Who do you suspect?" "Everyone. Including the three of you." The statement hangs in the air like smoke from a crematorium. "Fair enough," Colette says finally. "How do we prove ourselves?" "Information. Andre, you have access to German vehicle maintenance schedules. I want to know which cars are used by senior officers, where they're serviced, and when. Planning an assassination. Planning multiple assassinations. Marie, you have contacts in administrative offices. I need current prisoner lists, transfer schedules, and execution dates. That's extensive. And dangerous to obtain. Everything we do is dangerous. Colette, you process deportation orders. I need to know about pending roundups, target lists, and security arrangements. Some of that information doesn't exist in my department. Then find someone who does have access. Build relationships. Gather intelligence." Marie looks uncomfortable. "This sounds like you're planning something major." "I'm planning to destroy German intelligence operations in Paris. Completely. Starting with their information sources and working up to their command structure." "That's not resistance work," Andre objects. "That's war. It's always been war. We just haven't been fighting it properly." You pull out a piece of paper and begin sketching a rough organizational chart. "Here's how we're going to rebuild. Small cells, maximum 4 people each, no direct contact between cells except through a single coordinator. You. Me. Information flows up, orders flow down, and nobody knows more than they absolutely need to know. What about weapons? Explosives. Andre, your garage has access to fuel, lubricants, and industrial chemicals. Basic explosives are surprisingly easy to manufacture. I'm a mechanic, not a chemist. You're about to become both. Colette, your position in the prefecture gives you access to German administrative buildings. Map the layouts, identify security measures, note guard rotations. And if I'm caught with that information, then you die. Same as if you're caught helping Jewish families avoid deportation." Colette nods grimly. "At least the risk comes with better results. Marie, you're going to help me identify every remaining resistance member in Paris. Real names, operational skills, current locations, and loyalty assessments. That's a lot of trust to place in one person." "Yes, it is. Which is why if you betray that trust, I'll kill you myself." The words are spoken quietly, matter-of-factly, without emotional emphasis. "Understood," Marie says. "Good. Now, first priority, I need information about Henri Fiacca. Last seen in German custody 3 months ago. Current status unknown. I'll check the prisoner lists, Colette offers. But if he was captured in January, I know the probable outcome. But I need certainty. 2 days later, you sit in the Hotel Lutetia library reading about the Franco-Prussian War while waiting for Colette's report. The intelligence gathering has been more productive than expected. André identified 17 German staff cars that are serviced regularly at predictable intervals. Marie mapped the command structure of surviving resistance cells and identified 30 people still operational and willing to take orders. Colette accessed prisoner transfer records and deportation schedules going back 6 months. What she found was worse than you'd expected. Henri Fiacca was transferred to Buchenwald concentration camp on February 15. He survived the initial transport and was assigned to a labor detail in the camp's armaments factory. He died on March 8, cause of death listed as exhaustion and dysentery. Medical terminology for being worked to death. The news should devastate you. Should leave you sobbing, grieving for the men you loved and the life you'd planned together. Instead, you feel nothing but a cold, crystalline clarity about what needs to happen next. Father Bernard didn't just betray your network. He murdered your husband, the priest who married you, who blessed your union, who spoke about sacred vows and eternal love. That same priest signed Henry's death warrant when he traded resistance information for German protection. Colette's report also included another piece of information. Father Bernard is still alive, still providing intelligence to German handlers, and still conducting services at his church as if nothing has happened. As if betraying people to their deaths is just another pastoral duty. Tonight, you're going to confession again, but this time, you're not seeking absolution. St. Augustine Church sits in the 8th arrondissement like a monument to better times. Gothic Revival architecture, towering spires, and ornate decoration that suggests God appreciates expensive gestures. It's also where Father Bernard has been conducting evening services every Tuesday for the past 15 years. Some habits survive even treason. You approach the church at 7:30 p.m., 30 minutes before the scheduled service. Early enough to position yourself advantageously, late enough to avoid the scrutiny that comes with being the first person to arrive. Your appearance tonight is different. Hair pinned up severely, glasses with plain frames, a dark coat that makes you blend into shadows. You look like a widow attending service out of habit rather than devotion, which isn't entirely inaccurate. At 7:45, Father Bernard emerges from the sacristy to prepare for evening service. He looks exactly as you remember, medium height, thinning hair, the kind of soft physique that suggests a life of intellectual rather than physical challenges. Nothing in his appearance suggests that he's responsible for multiple deaths. Nothing suggests that he's the reason Henri died in a concentration camp. You take a seat in the third pew on the left side of the nave, close enough to observe but far enough back to avoid attention. At exactly 8 p.m., Father Bernard begins the service. His voice is the same as always, measured, confident, carrying easily through the stone architecture. He speaks about forgiveness, about Christ's love for sinners, about the importance of confession and redemption. The irony is so thick you could cut it with a blade. Let us pray, he says, for those who have lost their way in these dark times. May they find guidance and return to the path of righteousness. You wonder if he's thinking about resistance members when he says this. If he considers betrayal a form of spiritual guidance. At 8:45, Father Bernard announces that he'll be available for private confession after the service concludes. For those who seek absolution for their sins. Perfect, the service ends. You wait until the crowd thins to 4 people, then approach Father Bernard directly. Father, I'd like to make confession, if you have time. He looks at you with the polite attention he'd give any parishioner. Of course, my child. The confessional will be available in just a moment. No recognition. After 3 years of working together, planning operations together, sharing the secrets that kept resistance members alive, he doesn't remember your face. Either his memory is remarkably poor, or he's been drinking enough to dull his faculties. Both possibilities work in your favor. You wait while he speaks with the remaining parishioners. At 9:15, the last parishioner leaves. Father Bernard locks the main doors and begins extinguishing candles. Father, you call out. Confession. Ah, yes. Of course. Please, go ahead to the confessional. I'll be with you momentarily. You enter the familiar wooden booth and kneel on the prie-dieu. Through the grill, you can see Father Bernard moving about the sanctuary, completing his closing ritual. After 5 minutes, he enters the priest's side of the confessional. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit, he begins. Bless me, Father, for I have sinned. How long since your last confession? 3 years. That's a long time, my child. What sins weigh on your conscience? You consider how to answer. The truth would be appropriate, but the truth would also end this conversation quickly and violently. I've harbored hatred in my heart, you say instead. Against people who've betrayed those I loved. Hatred is a heavy burden. Can you speak more specifically about this betrayal? People I trusted gave information to my enemies. Because of their actions, innocent people died. I see. And you wish to forgive these people? No, Father. I wish to kill them. A long pause. You can hear Father Bernard breathing through the grill, processing what you've said. My child, vengeance belongs to God alone. We are called to forgive those who harm us, not to seek retribution. Even when their betrayal leads to murder. Even then. Forgiveness is not about what others deserve. It's about freeing yourself from the poison of hatred. What if forgiveness isn't possible? What if the betrayal was so complete, so devastating, that mercy would be meaningless? Another pause. Longer this time. Everyone can be forgiven if they truly repent. Everyone can find redemption if they seek it sincerely. What about you, Father? I'm sorry. Do you ever seek forgiveness for your sins? All priests examine their consciences regularly. It's part of our spiritual discipline. What sins do you confess? The question hangs in the air. Through the grill, you can see Father Bernard's profile as he considers how to respond. That's an unusual question for a penitent to ask. Is it? You're asking me to confess my sins. I'm asking you to confess yours. My child, that's not how confession works. Then let's change the format. Instead of confessing to you, I'll tell you what I know about your sins. You hear him shift position, possibly preparing to leave the confessional. I know about your meetings with Oberfuhrer Klein. I know about the information you provided about resistance safe houses. I know about the operation schedules you shared, the names you gave them, the photographs you identified. Silence. I know that because of your cooperation, 17 resistance fighters were captured and executed. I know that 43 Jewish families were deported to concentration camps. I know that weapons caches were confiscated and safe houses were raided. Still silence. And I know that Henri Fiacre died in Buchenwald because you told the Germans where to find him. When Father Bernard finally speaks, his voice is different. Quieter. More careful. Who are you? Someone who trusted you. Someone whose husband you killed. Someone who's here to collect a debt. You're Nancy Wake. I was. She died when you betrayed her network. Now I'm something else entirely. You don't understand. They would have killed me if I hadn't cooperated. I had no choice. There's always a choice, Father. You chose to save yourself at the expense of people who trusted you. It wasn't like that. I tried to protect as many people as possible. I only gave them information about operations that were already compromised. Henri Fiacre wasn't compromised. He was betrayed. By you. I'm sorry about Henri. Truly. But individual deaths, they're tragic, but they're not as important as the larger picture. You draw the pistol from your coat and point it through the confessional grill. What larger picture? Father Bernard's breathing becomes rapid and shallow. The war will end eventually. When it does, France will need people who survive to rebuild. If I had refused to cooperate, you would have died with honor instead of living with shame. Honor doesn't rebuild churches or comfort grieving families or provide spiritual guidance to communities. Neither does betrayal. Please. I can help you. I have access to German intelligence, to prisoner lists, to information about future operations. If you spare me, I can feed them false information, misdirect their efforts. How do I know you won't betray me the same way you betrayed Henri? Because now I understand what you're capable of. Because I know the consequences of crossing you. Fear isn't loyalty, Father. It's just fear. Then what do you want? Justice. You cock the pistol's hammer. The sound echoes through the confessional like a death knell. Wait. Please. Let me make amends. Let me help repair the damage I've caused. How? Information. I know about planned raids, about which resistance members are still under surveillance, about German security measures. I can help you rebuild the network. The same way you helped me build it the first time. I have a list, he says quickly. Names of German agents operating in Paris. Not just military officers, but informants, collaborators, people who've been feeding them information. If you spare me, I'll give you the list. This gets your attention. A comprehensive list of German intelligence assets would be incredibly valuable for resistance operations. Where is this list? Hidden in the church. Behind the altar, there's a loose stone. I've been keeping records in case something like this happened. In case you needed leverage against your German handlers. Insurance. Yes. How many names? 47 confirmed agents. Maybe a dozen more that I suspect but haven't verified. 47 German assets eliminated would cripple their intelligence operations in Paris. It would be worth more than revenge against one priest, but trust Father Bernard. Trust the men who sent your husband to his death. If I let you live, if I take this list, what guarantee do I have that you won't betray me again? You'll have the list. You'll know their methods, their safe houses, their contacts. If I betray you, you'll have the information needed to destroy their entire network. And you'll have the information needed to warn them. I won't. I swear on the sacred host, on Christ's blood, on everything I hold holy. You held those same things holy when you swore to protect resistance members. Your oaths don't carry much weight. Then what would convince you? You consider the question. Father Bernard alive and cooperative could provide ongoing intelligence. Father Bernard dead would provide satisfaction but limited strategic value. The calculation is cold, practical, entirely focused on operational effectiveness rather than emotional satisfaction, which is exactly how Henri would have approached the problem. Show me the list. Father Bernard leads you from the confessional to the altar area. Behind the stone table, he kneels and works at a section of wall that looks identical to every other section. After a moment, a stone shifts, revealing a hollow space containing a metal box. Inside the box, documents, photographs, and a handwritten list of names, addresses, and operational details. You scan the list quickly. Many of the names are familiar: French civilians you'd suspected of collaboration, German officers you'd encountered, businesses that seem to cooperate too willingly with occupation authorities, but some names surprise you. People you'd considered reliable, locations you'd thought were safe, operations you'd assumed were secure. The information would indeed be valuable. Possibly valuable enough to justify sparing the person who provided it. This is comprehensive, you admit. I've been documenting everything for 2 years. Every contact, every meeting, every piece of information exchanged. Including your own activities. Including my own activities. You study Father Bernard's face in the candlelight. He's frightened but not panicked. Guilty but not repentant. Useful but not trustworthy. Here are the conditions for your continued existence, you tell him. First, you provide no further intelligence to German handlers without my explicit approval. Second, you feed them false information when I direct you to do so. Third, you report all contact with German agents to me within 24 hours. Agreed. Fourth, if you betray these conditions in any way, I will kill you slowly. Not a quick bullet, but something that takes hours and involves significant pain. I understand. Do you? Because Henry's death took weeks. Starvation, disease, and exhaustion in a concentration camp. If you betray me, your death will be significantly worse. I won't betray you. Finally, you will assist in actively sabotaging German operations. Not just providing information, but participating in actions designed to kill German personnel and destroy German resources. Father Bernard hesitates. I'm a priest. I can't participate in violence directly. You already have. Every person you betrayed, every family you condemned, every resistance member you identified, that's all violence. Direct, intentional violence. That's different. No, it isn't. The only difference is that now the violence will serve French interests instead of German ones. A long pause. What if I refuse? Then I kill you now and take the list anyway. That's not much of a choice. It's more choice than you gave Henri. Another pause. You can see him calculating odds, weighing options, looking for alternatives that don't exist. I agree to your conditions. As you prepare to leave, Father Bernard asks one final question. Will you ever forgive me for what happened to Henri? You consider the question seriously. Forgiveness, redemption, the possibility of moving beyond hatred and vengeance. No, you say finally. But I'll work with you anyway. Because Henri would have wanted German officers dead more than he would have wanted you forgiven. 3 weeks later, you sit in the Hotel Lutetia library planning the systematic destruction of Nazi intelligence operations in Paris. Your position inside German headquarters has proven more useful than expected. Daily access to operational briefings, prisoner transport schedules, and administrative communications has provided intelligence that would have taken months to gather through conventional resistance methods. The false intelligence operation has been remarkably successful. Over the past 3 weeks, German patrols have raided 17 locations based on your tips about resistance meetings. All 17 locations were abandoned buildings, empty warehouses, or addresses that never existed. While German forces wasted time and resources chasing phantoms, the real resistance network has been rebuilding with unprecedented efficiency. Marie's coordination has resulted in operational contact with 43 confirmed resistance members. André's garage-based intelligence gathering has mapped German vehicle maintenance schedules, officer transport routes, and security protocols for major installations. Colette's access to deportation records has enabled the resistance to warn Jewish families about pending roundups, resulting in successful evacuations from targeted neighborhoods. Most importantly, Father Bernard's cooperation has provided detailed information about German agent networks, safe house locations, and communication protocols. Tonight, you're implementing phase 1 of what you've come to think of as the final solution to the German problem in Paris. 47 confirmed German agents, operating in cells across the city, coordinating surveillance and intelligence gathering for the occupation authorities. By morning, none of them will be alive. The operation begins at 11:30 p.m. with simultaneous strikes across Paris. You're not participating directly. Your position inside German headquarters is too valuable to risk on field operations. Instead, you're coordinating from the Hotel Lutetia library, using a modified radio hidden inside a hollowed-out German technical manual. Marie's voice crackles through the hidden speaker. Position Alpha secure. Target eliminated. No complications. André reports 30 seconds later. Position Beta complete. Vehicle destroyed. Documents recovered. Colette. Position Gamma successful. Target neutralized. Evidence secured. One by one, the reports come in. German agents found in their apartments, eliminated quietly, their communications equipment and intelligence files confiscated before German security forces realize what's happening. The operation is proceeding with clockwork precision, but you know that precision won't last. As more bodies are discovered, German forces will realize they're under coordinated attack and implement emergency security measures. You have maybe 2 hours before the entire city goes into lockdown. Time to escalate. All units, implement Phase 2. Repeat, implement Phase 2. Phase 2 involves hitting German administrative buildings while security forces are distracted by the agent killings. Records offices, communication centers, and detention facilities that contain information about resistance members, deportation schedules, and operational plans. At 12:15 a.m., the first explosion echoes across Paris. German Records Office on Rue de Rivoli, 3rd floor, complete destruction of deportation files. 12:22 a.m., communication center near Place de la République. Radio equipment destroyed, transmission logs eliminated. 12:31 a.m., detention facility on Al-Dalah site. Prisoner records destroyed, several resistance members freed during the confusion. By the time they realize they're facing a citywide operation, Phase 3 is already beginning. Phase 3 targets German personnel directly. Not random soldiers or low-level administrators, but senior officers whose deaths will disrupt command structures and operational planning. Oberfuhrer Klein, who's been coordinating the hunt for the White Mouse. Hauptmann Müller, who oversees prisoner interrogations. Oberstleutnant Weber, who manages deportation logistics. SS Brigadier Richter, who commands security forces across the Paris region. All of them are scheduled to die tonight. At 1:45 a.m., you receive confirmation that Klein is dead, killed in his staff car by a bomb that André placed during routine maintenance. Müller dies 20 minutes later, shot by a sniper as he left his mistress's apartment. Weber's death comes at 2:15 a.m. when explosives hidden in his office kill him and his aide during a late-night planning session, but Richter proves more elusive. His security detail is larger, his movements more unpredictable, his residence is better protected. At 2:30 a.m., Marie reports, target 4 location unknown. Security detail increased. Recommend abort. You consider options. Richter's survival would leave German security forces with experienced leadership capable of coordinating counterattacks against resistance operations, but pursuing him further would risk resistance members' lives for diminishing returns. Abort target 4, you decide. All units implement extraction protocols. By 3 a.m., resistance teams are withdrawing to safe houses while German security forces lock down the city, but the damage is done. In 4 hours, the resistance has eliminated most of German intelligence assets in Paris, destroyed years of accumulated intelligence files, and killed several senior officers whose experience will be impossible to replace quickly. More importantly, you've demonstrated that the resistance isn't a scattered collection of desperate individuals hiding in basements and hoping for Allied liberation. You're an organized military force capable of coordinated operations against hardened targets. 6 months later, SS Brigadefuhrer Heinrich Richter sits in his office reviewing casualty reports and wondering if he's losing his mind. In the past week alone, 17 German personnel have died in what appear to be random attacks across Paris. A staff sergeant shot while buying bread. A radio operator killed by a sniper while walking to work. A transportation coordinator who died when his bicycle exploded. No pattern to the targets except that they're all German. No political motivation except killing occupying forces. No strategic objective except making Paris as dangerous as possible for anyone wearing a German uniform. The attacks aren't sophisticated enough to be professional resistance operations. But they're too precise to be random violence. Someone is hunting German personnel with the methodical efficiency of a predator eliminating prey. Richter reviews the intelligence files scattered across his desk. Nothing connects the incidents except the fact that in each case, the attacker was a woman acting alone. A woman who seems to know German patrol routes, security protocols, and personnel schedules with impossible accuracy. A woman who's been definitively identified as Nancy Wake in 4 separate eyewitness accounts, which should be impossible, since Nancy Wake died 6 months ago during the hotel raid that captured Simone Du Bois, except Simone Du Bois's body was never found. And Nancy Wake's corpse was never produced, and now someone matching Nancy Wake's description is systematically killing German personnel across Paris. His aide, a young lieutenant named Hoffman, steps inside with obvious nervousness. "Sir, we've received another report." Another attack. Yes, sir. Communications specialist, shot while leaving his apartment this morning. Single gunshot, no witnesses, attacker described as a dark-haired woman in civilian clothes. Richter marks the location on his map. 18th arrondissement, northern Paris, an area that's seen 3 attacks in the past 10 days. Lieutenant, I want every available man searching for this woman. Every checkpoint, every patrol, every surveillance team. Top priority. Yes, sir. What description should they use? Richter looks at the stack of witness reports, each describing a different woman with different features and different clothing. Tell them to look for Nancy Wake. But sir, Nancy Wake is dead. Apparently not. The phone on his desk rings. Another attack, probably. Another death to add to the growing list of casualties. Brigadier Richter. Good morning. The voice is female, speaking German with a slight accent. I understand you're looking for me. Richter's hand tightens on the receiver. Who is this? I think you know. Nancy Wake. Among other names. I prefer to think of myself as a solution to a problem. What problem? Germans in Paris. I'm working to correct that situation. By murdering soldiers. By eliminating occupying forces. It's not murder when you're at war. Richter signals frantically to Hoffman, pointing at the phone and mouthing, "Trace this call." What do you want? He asks, trying to keep her talking. To give you an opportunity. What kind of opportunity? Surrender. Withdraw all German forces from Paris immediately. Return to Germany and never come back. And if I refuse, then I continue killing Germans until there are none left. You're one woman against an entire army. I'm one woman who's already killed 37 of your people in 6 months. How many more do you think I can kill in the next 6 months? The line goes dead. Hoffman shakes his head. Not enough time to trace it, sir. Richter sits in silence, considering the implications of the conversation. Nancy Wake isn't just alive. She's declared war on the entire German presence in Paris, and based on her track record, it's a war she might actually win. That evening, as Richter reviews security arrangements for his own residence, he finds himself wondering what it would take to convince High Command that withdrawing from Paris might be strategically advisable. Outside his office window, Paris spreads out in the evening light. Beautiful, historic, civilized, and somewhere in that beautiful, historic, civilized city, Nancy Wake is planning his death. Richter pours himself a large glass of schnapps and begins drafting a report to Berlin about the current security situation in Paris. He has a feeling it's going to be a very long report, and he has an even stronger feeling that he won't live long enough to send it, because somewhere in Paris, the white mouse is still hunting, and mice, as it turns out, can be remarkably persistent when they decide to eliminate predators from their territory.